His divine grace, AC Bhakti Vedanta, Srila Prabhupada Ki. Jayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivajacharya Asatari Sata, His divine grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki. Natakota Vaishnava Vrinda Ki. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki. Prem Sikaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadara Shiva Sati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki. Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakan Radhakan Girdhar Govardhan Ki. Maya Pardhan Ki. Vrindavan Ki. Shumina Devi Ki. Tulsi Devi Ki. Transcendental Book Distribution Ki. ISKCON Philadelphia Ki. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki. Gaur Premanande. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga Hari Hari Bol. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasad Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityananda. Namaste Saraswati Devi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Rayana Namastrita Nanam Chava Naratana Devam Saraswati Materia Nastakai Sri Bhadrishu Nityam Bhagavati Shikaya Bhagavati Vishwampi Bhakti Bhagavati Vaishnavi. So good morning everyone. We are here Saturday morning, Srimad Bhagavatam.
Jai.
Jai is right. So we're reading from the third canto, chapter 10, the divisions of creation. And this is a lovely conversation between Vidura and Maitreya. So we'll work on the verse together. Vidura uvacha.
Vidura uvacha.
Yahata bahurupasya.
Yatata bahurupasya.
Harer abhuta karmana.
Harer adbhuta karmana.
Kalyakyam Lakshanam Brahman.
Kalakyam Lakshanam Brahman.
Yata Varnayana Prabho.
Yata Varnayana Prabhu.
Vidura Uvacha.
Vidura Uvacha.
Yatata Bahurupasya.
Yatata Bahurupasya.
Harer Abhuta Karmana.
Harera Bhuta Karmana.
Kalayakayam Lakshanam Brahmana.
Kalayakayam Lakshmanam Brahman.
Yata Varnayana Prabho.
Yata Varnayana Prabhu.
Vidura Uvacha.
Vidura Uvacha.
Yatata Bahurupasya. Hare Abhuta Karmana.
Harera Bhuta Karmana.
Kalakyam Lakshanam Brahman.
Kalakayam Lakshmanam Brahman.
Yata Varnayana Prabho.
Yata Varnayana Prabhu.
Vidura Uvacha.
Vidura Uvacha. Yatata Bahurupasya. Harera Bhuta Karmana. Kalakyam Lakshmanam Brahman.
Avarnayana Prabhu.
Yata Varnayana Prabhu.
Vidura Uvacha.
Vidura Uvacha. Yatata Bahurupasya. Harera Bhuta Karmana. Kalakyam Lakshmanam Brahman. Yata Varnayana Prabhu. Vidura Uvacha.
Vidura Uvacha.
Yata Ata Bahurupasya.
Bahurupasya.
Harera Bhuta Karmana.
Hare Abhuta Karmana.
Kalakyam Lakshmanam Brahman.
Kalakyam Lakshanam Brahman.
Yata Varnayana Prabhu.
Yata Varnayana.
Vidura Uvacha.
Yahapasya.
Harera Bhuta Karmana. Kalakyam Lakshanam Brahman. Yata Varnayana Prabhu.
Anyone online?
Vidura Uvacha
Vidura Uvacha.
Yathatha Bahurupasya
Yatata Bahurupasya.
Harer Adbhuta Karmana
Harera Bhuta Karmana.
Kalakhyam Lakshanam Brahman
Kalakyam Lakshanam Brahman.
Yatha Varnayana Prabho.
Yata Varnayana.
Vidura Uvacha
Vidura Uvacha.
Yatatta Bahurupasya
Yatata Bahurupasya.
Harer Adbhuta Karmana
Harera Bhuta Karmana.
Kalakyam Lakshmanam Brahman
Kalakyam Lakshanam Brahman.
Yata Varnayana Prabhu.
Yata Varnayana.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, we'll do word for word. Vidura Uvacha.
Vidura Uvacha.
Vidura said.
Vidura said.
Yata.
Yata.
As. Ata.
Ata.
You have said.
You have said.
Bahurupasya.
Bahurupasya.
Having varieties of forms.
Having varieties of forms.
Hare.
Hare.
Of the Lord.
Of the Lord.
Abhuta.
Adbhuta.
Wonderful.
Wonderful.
Karmana.
Karmana.
Of the actor.
Of the actor.
Kala.
Kala.
Time.
Time.
Akyam.
Akyam.
Of the name.
Of the name.
Lakshanam.
Lakshmana.
Symptoms.
Symptoms.
Brahman.
Brahman.
O learned Brahmana.
O learned Brahmana.
Yata.
Yata.
As it is.
As it is.
Varnaya.
Varnaya.
Please describe.
Please describe.
Na.
Na.
Unto us.
Unto us.
Prabho.
Prabhu.
O Lord.
O Lord.
Translation of purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki.
Jai.
Vidura inquired from Maitreya, O my Lord, O greatly learned sage, kindly describe eternal time, which is another form of the Supreme Lord, the wonderful actor. What are the symptoms of that eternal time? Please describe them to us in detail. Purport. The complete universe is a manifestation of varieties of entities, beginning from the atoms up to the gigantic universe itself, and all is under the control of the Supreme Lord in his form of Kala, or eternal time. The controlling time has different dimensions in relation to particular physical embodiments. There's a time for atomic dissolution and a time for the universal dissolution. There's a time for the annihilation of the body of the human being, and there's a time for the annihilation of the universal body. Also, growth, development, and resultant actions all depend on the time factor. Vidura wanted to know in detail the different physical manifestations and their times of annihilation. Sri Chaitanya Manovistam Sapatam Yena Bhutales Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhupada Shri Advaita Kadam Shri Satyam Bhakti Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Bhutales Shri Nitya Pictures and then to take the supreme body and translate. So I'm going to read the translation again. Vidura inquired from Maitreya, O my Lord, O greatly learned sage, kindly describe eternal time, which is another form of the Supreme Lord, the wonderful actor. What are the symptoms of that eternal time? Please describe them to us in detail. So Vidura is very wise. He's asking very intelligent questions here of Maitreya. These aren't just ordinary questions. These are very intelligent, highly evolved questions. He's asking about the symptoms of time. What does that look like? How is time manifesting for the living entity? How's time manifesting in the universe? So these are very sober, very astute inquiries that he's making of Maitreya. And he's, so many often will take for granted the passing of time, which, we can see that in maybe in our day-to-day lives, just time lapses by and it's like, oh my God, it's summer. Oh my God, how is another year gone by? How is this possible? So we can see the passing of time and, we're going to, in future verses in the upcoming week, we're going to get into things that interweave, like the modes of material nature and the passing of the body. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. So today I want to get into understanding Krishna as time, Kala. We're going to talk about the transience of time, and I want to tell a little bit about a little bit of Hiranyakashipu's story, because I think that's very much relevant. So in Krishna, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about himself as time. And this is a well-known verse in Bhagavad Gita, 1132. It's in the 11th chapter when Krishna is describing his opulences. And the translation is, the Supreme Personality of God said, is a very famous verse, time I am, the great destroyer of worlds. I've come here to destroy all people. With the exception of you, the Pandavas, all the soldiers here on both sides will be slain. So time I am, destroyer of worlds. Sounds almost very bleak. It sounds like, oh God, time is the destroyer. But when we think about it, when we see things with time, we might see with time a baby growing or a plant growing or a tree growing. But we also, with time, see decay. We see aging. We see death. So that is the flip side of time. And we know that in Bhagavad Gita 2:13, Dehino Yasmin Yaka Dehi Kamaram Yavaram Jara. So this is the famous verse that as an embodied soul passes this from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes from another body at death. So it's saying the sobriety of a person understands this. So what is that passing of boyhood to youth to old age? That's the passing of time too. And we can see that manifesting physically, probably in our own bodies. I know I definitely see it. We see it in our family. We see it, like I said, even a baby, we can see that passing of time, because the moment a baby is born, it is aging and is now subject to the impacts of time, along with everything else. But today we're talking about time, kala. So the effects of time can be very sobering to one, but so often we might see that in this world, we see people racing around. I'm going to get into that in a little bit, but we see people racing around trying to somehow buy time. Have you heard that time? Have that phrase, I need to buy myself some time. So we can all relate to what that might feel like, that there just doesn't feel like there's enough time. There's not enough time. Oh my goodness, there's so much to do. There's not enough time. Time keeps passing by. So in the context of today's verse, where Prabhupada is sharing with us that the controlling time has different dimensions in relation to particular physical embodiments. There's a time for atomic dissolution and for the universal dissolution. Universal dissolution, that means, that there's annihilation. And so at the end of Kali Yuga, we're told that Lord Kalki will come and there's the annihilation, and then things will restart so that we can reset back to Satya Yuga. So we have these different yuga cycles that are constantly passing, and there's different effects of each yuga cycle, right? Constantly just this never-ending passing of time. But there's always this reset, there's a dissolution that comes with that. There is a sense of annihilation of the physical body, right? Because at the end, the physical body it passes, it dies. It's no longer, it's not living and breathing. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Hiranyakashipu today. Just because Hiranyakashipu tried so hard to defeat Krishna and defeat time. He wanted to become immortal. So when someone is trying to become immortal, what are they essentially trying to do? They're trying to defeat the Lord, but they're trying to defeat time in that drive for immortality. And so Hiranyakashipu, he performed austerities for a very, very, very long time. And they were very excruciating austerities. Horrible, standing on one foot, meditation, standing no food, no drink, all these austerities that he was doing. For what purpose? To be eternal. He wanted to be like the Lord. That was it. He had so much envy, yet, we know that envy is not a positive quality, but he had so much envy. He wanted to control everything. He wanted all of the boons available to him so that he could never die. And this is the effect that even we know how he reaches his demise, right? Hiranyakashipu doing the equivalent 36,000 years of austerities to acquire these boons from Lord Brahma, which are, we know them, right? Cannot be killed in the day or night or by an animal or by a weapon. I mean, he thinks he's so smart that he can outsmart the Lord. So smart. He has a whole list prepared. And Lord Brahma, I think, grants them all, but Lord Brahma is not Krishna. So he can't, he can only grant so much. But he grants him all these things. But we know at the end, he was a demon. He was trying to control. He was trying to prevent others. He was trying to prevent others from establishing a relationship with the Lord because he wanted to be the controller. He wanted to be eternal. So and then he has a son who, speaking of time, tells his childhood friends, the friends are like, no, we want to play. We just want to enjoy. And what does Prahlad come back and say? No, but the time is ever passing. We have to take shelter now. We have to develop a relationship now. Not when we're old, because the friends, when we're old, then we'll do these things. And how often might we see people say, next year, when I'm retired, that's when I'm really gonna dig into spiritual life, or when I'm retired, that's really when I'm gonna start going on pilgrimage and visiting holy sites, because right now I have to do all these things. So when I'm retired, and then when they're retired, they might be enjoying with their friends, maybe they're, going out golfing, going on some nice vacation, and then maybe it's like next year, next year, next year. And then what happens? Time comes into play, and that time is cut short. And we never know. And this is the thing about time, because we think about time in the very, ignorant sense so often that it's just always going to be there, and it will. But we think about it in the ignorant sense that it's just limitless. But we can get cut short in a moment. In a moment. So when Prahlad was preaching to his school friends, this is like a kindergartner, the equivalent of a kindergartner, right? He's preaching to his friends. No, you have it all wrong. You have it completely wrong. You should not be waiting. Who knows what can happen? You have to try to do this now, so you have your whole life ahead of you to establish this relationship, to establish this practice. It's just like, what if, with kids, the babies are wandering around and they're trying to mama, da, 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 da. And what if the parents were just like, you can work on speaking and learning language when you're older. You can just be a baby. It's fine. It's all good. And then they get into school and they're like, mama, dada, and the kids are like, you can't talk, and then they're just keep progressing. They're like, and the parents like, you're fine, just keep enjoying. They're like giving them toys and candy. Like, imagine what would happen. This child, as we know, as we get older, it gets harder to learn things, right? I know, I personally, I've been working on Spanish for a good couple of years now, and I'm getting there, but I used to be able to learn languages like that. I could pick up languages like that. Now, now I'm older and I'm just like, I'm working a little harder at it. So this is the passage of time. This is the deterioration, So Prahlad is emphasizing that we learn it when we're young, or as young as we can. If we came to this path now, then we start now, immediately take to it. Because the further we go along in life, the more that interferes, right? The more that comes into impede that progress just by the passage of time and through our aging process. And our brains, unfortunately, I'm a nutrition, I know, and healthcare, I know all the things we can do to help our brains stay sharp as we age, and those things definitely can help, but we still need to take to the process quickly. So Hiranyakashipu, here he is. He is doing all of these austerities simply for immortality, and so that he could be the king of all the demons and rule forever and ever and ever and ever. But he's defeated. He's defeated by, of course, the Lord, because, and is the form of Nrsingadev, because Nrsinga can outsmart any, the Kala is the Lord. It's a form of the Lord. Anything that is eternal and everlasting, time is forever going on. That's a form of the Lord. So, and that's, like I said, in that verse, it says, time I am destroyer of worlds. So here we know in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, those who are seers of the truth have concluded that the material body, that of the non-existent, there is no endurance, of the eternal, there is no change. They've concluded by studying the nature of both. So what does that mean? So the material body, there's no endurance. Of the eternal, there is no change. So the material body, we know, passing from boyhood to youth to boyhood, to old age, there is that change. And there's constant change we can see around us. And again, like I said, this is the passing time. We see this all around. We see the trees growing, we see them dying, we see things aging. But the eternal does not. The eternal is ever present, ever available. There's no death, just like our soul. So what we know about the soul cannot be cut, it cannot be burned, it cannot be destroyed. These are qualities of the soul within us, but they are the soul within us. They're not the material body. So if we think that we are the body without identifying more deeply with the soul, we will feel the effects of the passing of time much more deeply than someone who only identifies with the body. And this can be a very painful process for some, it can be a very painful process because those who are solely identifying with the physical body are going to only experience those difficulties without truly having the understanding that there's more to it. So we have Hiranyakashipu, we have Prahlad, we have the two opposing examples here of time and how we can look at time. Now we fast forward to present day. Here we are in Kali Yuga, and we see how many time management books out there, how many time management apps are out there. We have Google Calendar, Outlook Calendar. We have, task lists and books and everything that we can do to try and maximize our time management. But the problem is that we're limited to 24 hours. So here in the material energies, in this planet, we have 24 whole hours to work within a day, and that's it. That's all we have. And we have to go to work. We have to, maintain ourselves. All these things that are essential for time. So if we were, thinking on the lines of Vidura, who was very sober, he's very learned, and he's also very curious and wants to know. He's very intelligent. He wants to know what the effects of time truly are. So when we are here, we're thinking, okay, the effects of time, modes of material nature, right? Modes of material nature are involved, and we hear these things over and over again. I say this so often when I give class, but we might hear these concepts over and over again, but how much are we living them? And that's why we need the repetition, so that we can start to really, every time we hear it, we embrace it. And that repetition, it's just like with language learning, or training for a marathon. We have to do the repetition over and over and over again, so that hopefully at some point we can really embrace it. So the inquiry by Vidura was really to understand the universe and to understand the position of the living entity in the universe, to really understand how the modes of material nature play out, how creation, how Paramatma, how we can relate to Krishna in our daily lives. Because Vidura knows, just the way Arjuna was having a dialogue with Krishna on the battlefield. We take these dialogues and we can use them as a great example for us to understand how we can approach these topics. We approach them hopefully with sobriety, and that dhira, sober mind, that dhira. Sobriety is when we truly understand. The sobriety of our mind is that we truly understand our position, that we're not clouded over, right? When someone's in sobriety from alcohol, we know alcohol can cloud one's judgment. Alcohol can make one think something is the way it is, but it's not. And what happens when we're so engrossed in the material energies, we can also become very inebriated. And this inebriation is because we have in fact walked out of our front door, stepped into the world, and accepted that as all there is. And it's very hard. This is a very difficult thing about spiritual life, about religion, is that the physical body is so deeply connected and attached to the material energies, because the physical body itself is material. So like attracts like. So we have material energies of the body that are wanting to engage in the material energies of the world. And that's just how we're designed. So it's very difficult, and to control our minds. Arjuna says it's harder, we're harder to control the wind. Our minds are like trying to control the wind. They're very difficult. So, and even if we know the struggles of all of these different great personalities that step out into the world, they also are trying to correct that misidentification of the body with the material energies. every single, and they're trying to, they're setting that example, but for, people who are not, that are just out there, like, well, if we look out, even outside of our own lives, and we look at the people out there in the rat race, it's called a rat race, or the hamster wheel. You go into 95 or 76 and, we were driving home from Bhakti Garden last night and we're just like, whoa. It's always an adventure getting home on a Friday night from Bhakti Garden because you're driving we live in Malvern in Chester County now. So we're driving home on 76 and people are just like, phew, phew. So it's just like to stay at 60 miles, 55, 60 miles an hour, just hold your pace, hold your lane, and let people just kind of weave out of you. And it's like, what's your rush? Where are you going? They're rushing to get to the next thing, most likely. Maybe the very, very, very small percentage have an actual emergency that they're trying to get to, but 99.9% of the people are just like caught up. They're in a rush to get to someplace else. Jumping from here to here to here to here to here to here to here, right? And what is that? That's just an addiction. So without understanding the effects of time, we can become very inebriated. And it's that inebriation through the addiction that we have, through the addiction to life, through the addiction to the material energies, and even the addiction to racing against the clock and running. It's not, as we know, if anyone has ever worked with addictions, done any addiction counseling, read books about addiction, it's not easy. And for us as spirit souls, we have a natural proclivity toward being addicted. And I heard this story once that someone was walking through a grocery store and he was seeing all the different, sweets and cookies and snacks, and just like, trying to decide, and he's like, God, they're just all so good, so addictive. And this old lady goes by like, life's addictive, honey, and it was just like, and he's like, yeah, you're right. You're right. Life is addictive because it could be anything that pulls us in. So we call out, alcoholism and things like that, because those are the ones that are acknowledged the most as, disease and that are treatable, and they have very serious effects on people's lives. So they're very serious. And there's the other aspect of addiction. You might be addicted to, some people get addicted to video games, or some people get addicted to scrolling on Instagram, or some people get addicted to, shopping, filling their calendars, And all of this often is to cover over our own suffering. Because when we become sober, we also become tuned into the suffering that we might be experiencing here in these material energies, and that doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to tap into that. It's uncomfortable. Our mind wants to reject it. Our mind wants to go somewhere else. Make it feel a little bit happier, a little more comfortable, maybe numb it, numb the pain, numb the difficulties. But unfortunately, that's the addictive mindset, right? Is to push it away, to cover it over, and to throw ourselves into something else. So what is the remedy? What is the remedy for the addictive mind? Well, we can start by trying to dovetail the addiction. This is always the recommendation. We dovetail to see if we can put that towards something more positive for us. But the other thing we want to try and do is also recognize that our time is limited, and how we spend it, how we spend each and every moment is so critical. I mentioned this, I don't remember if it was in a class, but I was talking about this, I think it may have been in a class, that, people that are atheists, I feel sad for them. Because they don't have any real compass. They just only see chaos. They don't have any anchor that will pull them out of the chaos, pull them out of the addiction. Maybe they do self-care, self-help things, maybe they try those methods, but ultimately, truly the anchor that will help pull us out is a relationship with God, with Krishna. So when you see people out there that are completely defying or ignoring or any relationship, any existence of God, and saying there can't possibly be a God because there's so much suffering. There can't possibly be a God because everything here is so chaotic and so difficult. How could God possibly allow for this? So they think there is no God, clearly. But we know that's not the case. We know that these material energies are here because we chose to move away from God. And so in that choice, we are experiencing what it feels like to be separate. And it doesn't feel very good. It's not a positive thing. It is chaotic. When we choose to separate ourselves from the Lord, and we all have at some point in one of our many lives done that, because we're here. So we're all here together. Thankfully, we've all come into this space. We've all come into this path to try and figure it out. And thankfully, we have Srila Prabhupada as our guide, that beacon of hope and light that can help us navigate these energies, navigate how we got here and not repeat history. Because that time is so precious, and Prabhupada knows, and he knew that our time was so precious and so limited, even though he knew his youthful disciples and followers did not have a grasp on that. He came in as an elderly man. He was in his 70s by the time things really took hold. He already had these experiences. He knew, not only did he have the wisdom from being who he is, being a very exalted soul, he also had the gift of age to bring that perspective that this is, looking at his disciples saying, take this path so seriously. Just give this one life to the Lord. Give this one life to God. So he was preaching, making a strong impact and making waves too. Of course it was going to make waves. Prabhupada made waves wherever he went because people don't want to hear. They don't want to hear that they're addicted. What happens when you try and do an intervention? A lot of times you hear stories or you see documentaries about interventions that happen. A family comes in, descends on the person that may be an alcoholic or a drug addict, and they sit them down, and they can get pretty ugly. It can get very messy. So you have Prabhupada coming in to the United States, to Americans who are highly addicted to their culture, highly addicted to all of the activities that they were doing, to the drugs and the alcohol, the movements. And he came in with a message and he made waves. But he also, for those that were, willing, he helped people get sober. He helped people find sobriety from the material world. And through that sobriety, they were able to then pass that message out to others and filter that out. So when we think about all of our interactions in the world and we see people out there suffering so much, how can we personally help others understand the impact of time, understand the impact of this material world? How can we help people become sober? Prabhupada's given us some beautiful examples. The nice thing about Prabhupada, we have all of these examples in Shastra of these great personalities, but Prabhupada was current day. We know people that knew Prabhupada. That's a gift. Whereas some of these other personalities that we speak about in Shastra, they were a very long time ago. So we have that current day context from Prabhupada to show us how to intervene in society to bring about more sobriety, to help people understand that time is limited in this material energies. So what did he do? The first thing he did, kirtan. He sat under in Washington Square, he did kirtan. And some people are like, oh, what's this old man doing? And back in the 60s, there were not many Indian-bodied people here at all. So it was quite a sight, not to mention he was dressed in sadhu clothing. So not only was this an Indian man, which is a rarity, but an Indian man dressed in sadhu clothing, which is even more of a rarity. There were some that were trickling over in the 60s here and there, but it was still a rare sight. So in that sense, he sat under a tree, he chanted with his kartals. That was it. Yeah, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. He was just chanting. And people came in, one by one. They came in. And then what did he do then? He gave them some food. He gave them prasadam, and then he gave them Bhagavad Gita, but he gave them prasadam. So he brings them in, he starts cooking for them. So he gives them prasadam. He helps them understand what sanctified food means, to have that, understanding, to eat things that are offered to the Lord. They feel that benefit. Then he starts to teach them about the lessons within Bhagavad Gita. He doesn't jump right into Chaitanya Charitamrita. He probably, because he knew everything so well, referenced things. But he was going into, starting with here's your Bhagavad Gita. Let's start learning this. And working with all of his disciples to better understand. And they started to teach them kirtan. Started to teach them how to chant on japa, chant on their beads. And then he started to help them get initiation, understand the process of the parampara, which is something so valuable to this path. The parampara stands the test of time. The parampara truly stands the test of time because it is that lineage connection that to deliver it to us today. So if the parampara stands the test of time, that must mean that there's a connection to Krishna. If there wasn't a connection to Krishna, the parampara wouldn't have withstood this test of time. Because we know time destroys, time annihilates. So we want to take heed, trust the parampara, trust in it, and really use that as an anchor, as a guidepost for our spiritual life, because it's there. When I first started reading the Bhagavad Gita, I had just found a book on my own somewhere and just picked it up. And I was on some other new agey spiritual path and wasn't resonating. It was kind of made up, in my opinion. So having come off of some of these more new agey paths, when I came to the Bhagavad Gita, what drew me in was the parampara. That was the number one reason I showed up at the temple. Well, and because it was Bhakti Yoga, and that really resonated with me. But I came because the parampara made it to me, gave me faith. Shraddha is not easy to come by. So Krishna finds ways that will help us increase our faith in whatever way we need. So for me, Krishna, I think, knew I needed to see a clear lineage because I'd come from all these like woo-woo-y, made up paths. So he knew I needed to see a lineage to get me hooked. Other people, their faith increases through kirtan. Others, their faith increases by meeting a sadhu, a pure devotee, someone that's very elevated. Other people's faith increases because they read Shastra and it really resonates with them in their hearts. But because we have parampara in our hearts, Krishna knows exactly when we turn on our little light, you're in the airplane, you turn your button to get the stewardess, the flight attendant to come, you turn the light on. When we turn our light on for Krishna, Krishna knows how to attend to our needs. But if we keep that light off and we're just going about in our material lives, then, Krishna will be continuing the karmic effects will be continuing to play out. Time will continue to pass. We might be just in our modes of being addicted to material energies. But as soon as we put that signaling light on to Krishna to say, I want to connect. I want to connect with you. Krishna reciprocates and finds the way to us, finds the way for us to find him. And he will tap on that and make sure that we get it. So when you hear other people's stories about how they came, they're going to be very different. Everyone has their own different story because everyone has their own different programming. Everyone has their own karma. Everyone is a different person, has a different brain, has a different way of understanding bhakti yoga and philosophy and the relationship with God. So everyone is going to probably have slightly different stories that got them to where they want to be. So when we're out there thinking about how can I make a difference? How can I help someone, wake up, or how can I bring sobriety to those around me? We have to remember too, that everyone has a different path forward. So everyone has often a different stepping point that gets them in the door. So it might not always, should not be discouraged. If we had someone to Bhagavad Gita, on the street and they're just like, because that might not be the way in. And I laugh about this now, but I've said to people in the past, I'm like, if a book distributor, and this is no offense to book distributors, because I love book distributors. If a book distributor had personally come up to me and handed me a book, I probably would have rejected it. And Krishna knew that. And it has nothing against book distributors, because I love book distributors, but it's me as a person. I don't like to be told what to do. Jonah knows that. But, I needed to find it on my own. So this is, we have to remember that everyone has their own path in. So maybe it's just a piece of prasadam. Maybe it's just chanting kirtan for them to hear the holy name. So I'm going to stop here and let anyone offer any corrections. First and foremost, thank you again for the opportunity to give class. Any questions, reflections on today's topics? Anyone online?
Hare Krishna. Thank you. So this time, as you were talking today, understanding that Krishna is time, time is a form of Krishna, I think can help people cope with the denial of the aging process. A lot of people are resentful of it. They try to reverse it. They try to ignore it, pretend it's not happening. It's a big source of depression amongst people. They see their life passing by. They see them getting older. They can't do the things they want to do. Their families are different as a result of time. Loved ones die, and people try to resist it. But when you're able to see that it's Krishna, this is a form of Krishna, you can actually worship it.
Yeah.
You can actually kind of worship time. You can see the value of time, that this is Krishna moving things forward. I think offering that perspective to people, I don't think in general people see time, they don't know what time is. It just is, right? But when you see it as actually a form of God, I think it can help people.
Yeah. Beautiful insight.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. I agree. I mean, I think people, like you said, don't have a good concept of time. They know it exists. They know that they're rushing against it all the time. But to understand that it is Krishna is time, that the effects of Krishna in that time are really, like you said, worshipable. That if we turn toward Krishna in the worship of time, and we know that we're spending our time to relate to Krishna, to worship Krishna, to serve Krishna, then that is also a good use of our time as well. So,
That's a good point also, that one way that we can worship Krishna is by using our time wisely in Krishna's service.
exactly. Exactly.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other?
Mata is somewhat relevant question, but different topic. Like you mentioned also about Hiranyakasipu and Kanad Maharaj. But we read that there are so many millenniums and yugas. So each yuga has different leelas. So how do we understand that from time perspective? Like
Mhm.
currently we are in what some millennium, right? So and so all these pastimes have happened. But in different satyugas, there are different pastimes.
Mhm.
So we sometimes read, but sometimes there may be some disconnect from our understanding because we might be reading pastimes from one particular millennium, but that's maybe reference to be different millenniums. So
Yeah.
how do we understand?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything that we read in Shastra and Bhagavatam, we have to remember that is transcendental. So we can understand it the best we can, but to understand that, yes, it is coming from different yugas. There were different, yuga dharmas for each one. There were different qualities of those yugas. So it's really very important to keep that in focus when we're thinking about the different yuga cycles, Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Kali Yuga. All of those have different qualities, different like I said, the Dharma, the Yuga Dharma for each one. So when you have the different personalities within those yugas, carrying out different activities, we have to understand that that is also in relation to that yuga. So that's why I was saying Prabhupada is, and even Lord Chaitanya is also in Kali Yuga. So we have our own guideposts that can help us navigate that. But anything we read from other yugas, we want to try and understand. We don't want to try and over intellectualize that understanding, but to read it as it is, as Prabhupada has offered Bhagavad Gita, even as it is, but we just read it as it is and we take the lessons we can from it, without trying to become overly fixated on the process for that yuga. I don't know if that answers your question. Slightly. Is there more I can answer with that?
So maybe we can chat offline, but there are different millenniums also, and within that.
Yeah.
So let's say one millennium, the pastimes in Satyug, it will be the same for different millennium.
Oh, for the different yuga cycles, the Satya Yuga.
Yeah.
Well, the qualities are said to be similar from Satya Yuga and this, Manvantara. Yeah. So there's the different, was it Manvantara, Manu cycles, but there's 4, but there's several, maybe you have.
This is 14 Manvantars and a day of Brahma.
Right, exactly. So we're halfway through. We're like in the 7th. We're in the we're like at noon, I believe, and are halfway through the day of Lord Brahma. So, but it's said that we should understand them as far, and please correct me, anybody out there, we should understand that Satya Yuga's similar qualities with in each of those. As does Treta and Dwapara and Treta and Kali Yuga, they have similar symptoms, but then it's the reset and it comes back. So there's always a reset, but those yuga cycles are quite long, several million years. So we can understand that to be that they do reset, but the qualities, the Satya Yuga is the mode of goodness. So there are all the qualities that one would hope with meditation and, even the truthfulness, all of those austerities and things are there still. Piety are there in Satya Yuga mode, no matter which Manvantara they're in. But, yeah, sometimes it gets a little technical. Anyone else want to add to that, or yeah, Prabhu?
Krishna said in Bhagavad Gita that I am the destroyer of all worlds. And Arjuna was very upset about having to kill his teacher and his cousins and all that. And Krishna said that the law will be destroyed anyway.
Right. Yeah, because Krishna is time. And so he already knows what's to happen. And he already knows because I am destroyer of worlds, it means that he is going to also, they're already dead. He's taking care of them. Arjuna is just carrying out his responsibilities, his duties as kshatriya, on the side of the Pandavas. So that's it, essentially, but Krishna, we're living through this. We're working through our own lifespan. Krishna has already ordained a certain demise for us, but how are we going to choose to live the days here that are available to us, whatever they are? And so we can lament that. We can lament the fact that we're going to someday no longer be in these physical bodies, or we can celebrate this as an opportunity to let this be our last time passing through those cycles and really, going and transcending that. Anyone online? Any questions?
I don't see any hands up.
Okay. Should I go in the
You mentioned also how some people don't understand why people are suffering, and give it to God, why are people suffering so much?
Yeah.
And, because they just can't understand eternal time, and the soul is eternal. And if that's happening to that soul somewhere previous to that, they must have done something. And it's not just to punish them, but to teach them.
Yeah, it's really, something that I personally have had to navigate with suffering. You see someone go through a difficult time, we want to be careful to not be like, it's your karma, because they're suffering. So, but to have that understanding personally, to know that they are a spirit soul, their spirit soul has passed through different lifetimes, and maybe even in this current lifetime, maybe there's these effects, the sinful effects that are mature, that are now manifesting in one's life, that ultimately suffering comes because we do not choose to acknowledge our own identity. And that's the deepest of suffering, is when we turn our backs to God. We turn our backs to our own identity, which is the spirit soul within us. And that's ultimately, we still have karmic effects, even if we have that understanding and we have deep knowledge of I am spirit soul, I am a relationship with God. Even if we have that understanding, we still have difficulties. But the suffering is in the mind. And that's the thing we need to understand, that we can have physical difficulties, we can have challenges in life, but suffering is something that comes from up here. We are suffering because our mind is telling us a story that is not congruent with that relationship. So as soon as even when we have difficulties, in that experience of our own personal difficulties, when we lean into them and pray to Krishna for guidance, and we have gratitude for the things that we do have, and we might feel sad, but if our mind is aligned with the relationship with the Lord, and our mind is aligned with that the soul, knowledge of the soul, then our suffering will be lessened. But as soon as we turn our backs on that, then our suffering increases. And like I said, this is in the mind. You can create great physical difficulty for someone, or you can experience great difficult physical difficulties in the body and still not suffer. So that's something to understand too, is that it's the source of suffering. Thank you. Any other?
Yeah, science is really advancing phenomenally with astrophysics and how long it takes for the light that we're seeing in the sky. These planets, every day they're learning so much. It's just really amazing what's going on right now. So science is trying to understand this eternal time. because they can see it. It's starting with Einstein and before him.
Mhm.
The theories are being proven.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing it, and even if you read Sadaputa's books, you know, he's marrying a lot of scientific inquiry and scientific discovery with Shastra. So, if you ever have a chance to read any of Sadaputa's books, they're very interesting. You know, you have the scientific discovery that's happening, but it's just now they're starting to only slightly scratch the surface of what's contained in Shastra. And that's because Shastra is part of the parampara, and scientists are using a lot of mental gymnastics to get, and a lot of technology to get where they're at. So that's the difference, why it can take scientists a little longer to get there and why they might never fully achieve the understanding that is in Shastra, because it's so complex and it's so beyond what the mind can really conceive of. It's beyond our senses too. And we have to remember that too, that a lot of what's discussed in the cosmic creation is beyond our ability to understand in our senses and this material energy. So science is probably not going to get to all of it, even if they try. So thank you.
It's always evolving and changing.
Yeah.
You know, the theories they put forth back in the 60s and now refuted.
Right.
Because
Exactly.
the telescopes have become more refined.
That's why they're
So,
called theories.
100 years from now, we'll look back on today and say, you know, we knew nothing back then.
Yeah.
And then, you know,
Like germs.
Yeah.
so it keeps changing, keeps evolving, and not always right either.
Yeah. There are very few laws of science. Very, very. If you look to see how many actual laws there are, there's a law of gravity that they've gotten down. But scientific discovery is always theoretical, almost always.
And the Bhagavad Gita is always in terms of
Absolute truth.
absolute truth.
And that's the thing, it's the absolute
They come
truth.
up with the theories, it's just one, like we said, one knockdown after another. But the teaching of Bhagavad Gita will see the real truth.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Well, it's 9 o'clock, so we'll stop here. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone
Right.
online. Have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
day. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much for a nice class, Vrindavaneswari.
Good job.